Hey, BSP fans. Welcome to episode 2 of our new Black Swamp podcast. We're officially a series. Thanks to everyone who listened to our first episode with Terry Longshore. And if you haven't yet, you can still check it out on our website or wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search for Black Swamp Podcast and subscribe. If you're listening on Apple, be sure to throw us a rating, and don't be stingy, and a shout out in the form of a review. This will help more people find our little podcast. We got a little more housekeeping here. Judging wrapped up recently for our 2019 Percussion Ensemble Showcase, and we'd like to congratulate the winners. Let's see here. In the solo division, first place went to Bryce Turner from Baylor University, and Elisa Rush from Temple University took second place. We have two ensemble divisions. In the small ensemble division, first place went to Coppell High School Percussion Ensemble, directed by Annie Chernow. In second place, Josh Torres directed the Center Grove High School Percussion Ensemble. And in the large ensemble division, first place went to Cedar Ridge Percussion Ensemble, directed by Rick Rodriguez, and the VR Eaton High School, directed by Matt Moore, took second place. What's amazing is that these are high school and college students performing some pretty intense pieces at a really impressively high level. So congratulations again. Special thanks to our judges, Dan Smithiger, Matthew Coley, who both judged the solo competition, and then Megan Arns and Tracy Wiggins judged the ensemble competitions. So today we're going to be talking with BSP artist Josh Jones. If you don't already know, Josh is a very energetic young percussionist, currently principal with the Calgary Philharmonic. He's all over the internet, basically a social media master. If you're not following him on Facebook or Instagram, you're definitely missing out. You can find him at Josh Jones Drums on Instagram, or just search him out on Facebook. You'll find all sorts of cool stuff that he's doing. Some of that we're going to cover today, including his social media presence, how he stays motivated, his teaching philosophy, and even a little bit of Bruce Lee. Side note, we did record this interview several months ago, and since that time, Josh has both kicked cancer's butt and gotten engaged, and we couldn't be happier for him. Extra side note, there is a little recording interference, which hopefully you can listen past considering the content. So all that being said, here's Josh Jones. I just want to say thanks for taking some time to talk to us today, Josh. I know you got a lot going on in Canada, and that's some of what I want to kind of get to today and talk about some other stuff. But thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, no problem.
So you are in Canada right now, right?
Yes, I am in Calgary right now.
Okay. But you're obviously not from Canada.
I am
from
not.
The Chicago area?
Yes, I'm from the city of Chicago.
Okay. And that's in Illinois, right?
Yep.
And so how long have you been in Canada then? How long have you been in Calgary?
I've been here since the 31st of December of last year, so about 7 months, a little over 7 months.
That's quite a New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
You moved in on New Year's Eve, or you just kind of flew in and celebrated?
Well, I flew in and had to work the next day. So.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good start to the new year. You know, you got a gig right away. That's awesome. So tell me about Chicago. How did you kind of get started playing, or how did you know you were interested in playing percussion when you were a youngster?
Let's see. Long story short, I really started playing percussion when I was 2. And my parents...
You knew when you were 2 you were going to be a drummer.
Yeah, I started hitting like everything at 2. So my grandfather, on my 3rd birthday, my grandfather on my dad's side gave me a Mickey Mouse drum set for my birthday. and
awesome.
I basically broke that the next day.
So it wasn't the most well-built instrument.
No.
It served a purpose at the beginning, I guess. So what'd you do? You had to upgrade immediately then?
I think we held on to that for a pretty long time. I wish we still had that drum set, but we have the picture of it still. So, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool to. I mean, that's part of your history. It'd be cool to see. So you're 2, 3, kind of playing a little bit. You know, is this something you pursued in school? Obviously, like most kind of percussionists, elementary, grade school, or in junior high type of thing. Is that you kind of advanced through that, or was it kind of outside of school? How'd you kind of keep growing?
It was a little bit of both. So after tearing up drum sets at home, I started playing a little bit at church, very seldomly. It was only on Sundays, though, so I never really practiced at home. I just played like for 15 minutes on Sundays, and that was it.
Yeah, so that was like drum set type stuff?
Yeah, that was all drum set. And then in elementary school, I joined they had music education there. I think it started in 3rd and 4th grade. So 4th grade, the teacher wanted to start a new band. So she usually looks to 4th graders that are going into 5th grade to start beginning band. And she passed around these bongos and was like, does anybody think they can play this? And I was like, yes, I think I might play it. Yeah. And so, like, I started shredding on bongo.
Oh, wow, yeah.
But also turns out she had a dual purpose in that. She had just got some invitations and applications to join the percussion scholarship program that was hosted by Chicago Symphony. And so she pulled me aside and was like, hey, there's this program that I've sent some students to that, I think you'd be interested in. And so I was like, okay, well, whatever. I guess that's cool. I'll tell my mom.
So this was like 3rd or 4th grade already, and you were kind of being introduced to kind of symphonic work or like the Chicago Symphony.
Yeah, which I had no idea. I had no concept of what the Chicago Symphony was, we had gone on a field trip to there, which funny story later about that. But yeah, that was the extent of my knowledge of it. I just knew that there was a symphony and that people played instruments, I guess, and that was cool for a field trip. So I sent the application to my mom and dad, and they were like, yeah, we're taking you to this.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, support right off the bat. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I think at the time, and still, you filled out the application and you're instructed to go to a performance that they hold at the end of the school year. So I think it was like June, maybe early June. And the performances are always free. So we went there, sat in, I forget, we were probably pretty close to the front, if not like the second row. And they played a bunch of stuff. I was like really impressed and like, oh, this is kind of cool. But the last piece they played was called River Dance, and I will never forget it. The instructor, Douglas Waddell, just counted them off and left. And everybody just played the entire thing without a conductor, and it was the coolest thing I had ever seen. Right. And also the piece was really dope, so I was like, Mom, I have to do this.
Yeah, I mean, what a memorable experience. I mean, something like that to make such an impression, like, obviously that's, kind of the beginnings of, you knew what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you got to know Doug or Patsy in Chicago? Like, you kind of started to build a relationship with them, or how did anything transform there?
Oh yeah. So luckily, you'll have to talk to Doug sometime about my audition for the group. It was the funniest thing. So after the concert, they give you a time slot for your audition, quote unquote, because it's not really an audition. They just want to see if you have any, like, what kind of skills you have, if you're, flexible and things like that. So I obviously passed and started my time with the percussion scholarship group. I think it was like something like 9 years in the group, 9 or 10.
Holy cow! Yeah.
Yeah, from fourth grade going into fifth grade to graduating high school, and throughout those years, they basically became my second mom and dad, Doug and Patsy. Like they basically raised me in percussion.
Yeah, what incredible mentors and an awesome opportunity. So, yeah, that's amazing. Like, so 9 years, like the amount of playing that you got to do with, are there any, besides kind of the audition, are there any other experiences there that are really memorable?
Let's see. I always love playing Riverdance with them. It's like their theme song or something. Everybody who's gone through the group has played that piece. Let's see. I guess something that I kind of always had a hunch about, but I never really put much stock into. Having won this particular job, I'm the first person out of the group to have an orchestral position, which is a big honor and like really amazing and crazy. So
the program, it was obviously outside of school. It was kind of sort of extracurricular. Like how often did you meet, perform, have rehearsals, stuff like that? Was it pretty just weekly, regularly, or how did that work?
Oh, yeah. So lessons were always on Saturday unless there was a concert coming up. So it was very extracurricular, but it took a lot of my time, and I dedicated a lot of time to that. So I didn't really do much else outside of school and the percussion scholarship group. There are students who have done the program who have performed in other things, but I put all of my time into practicing for school and that. I didn't even do band in high school for the first 2 years just because I was afraid it would take too much time. So I eventually did it the second 2 years, but even then I was still putting the percussion scholarship group first, just because of how much time I spent there. I would spend all day. Like, I would get there at 9 and not leave until Doug left. Like, I would just stay there. Wow.
Oh, you were that kid then?
Yeah, I was that kid.
No, that's how you do it. That's awesome.
Yeah, so eventually, given that I was that kid, even before that, my second year there, I was helping Doug and Patsy, like, get the new group of students together with like, oh, make sure your thumb's doing this and watch out for this and don't do this, do this instead. Like, I was always helping them even when I was younger. So when I graduated high school, Patsy had an idea to give me a job as their assistant director, just because I would still be in town and I was already doing teaching and helping out with maintenance and things like that, and doing arrangements for Doug and stuff like that. Like, I was already doing the assistant job without getting paid for it.
Yeah, right. So you're like ingrained in the program. Yeah, that's great. What an opportunity. So that kind of got you through high school and then DePaul?
Yep, I was assistant director all through DePaul, which happened to be a very easy transition. Doug went to DePaul and studied with one of the teachers there and works with all of them at some capacity. So it was a very easy transition. Also, that all the teachers had a similar playing style and philosophy about percussion, so it wasn't like I was learning a completely different thing. I was just kind of going smoothly from Doug and Patsy to Eric Milstein and Michael Kazakis and Michael Green and Al Payson and Mark Demolakis. Also, they had like 5 teachers, so why not go there?
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. And earlier this year, I was at DePaul kind of for a Black Swamp, we call them a petting zoo or show and tell, and spent time with Mike Kazakis and students there, and your name came up at some point, and the whole room just like lit up. Like, so I think it's really, I mean, I think we'll kind of get to that too, but I think that's really kind of part of your story is just your energy and enthusiasm, and people that know you just get excited when they hear your name or talk about you. So I think that's really cool. So DePaul, and then are you still kind of playing like orchestral stuff in there? Like, is there some other stuff you were doing, or pretty much just straight up school, and then where'd you go from there?
Let's see. DePaul. The good thing about DePaul was the first 2 years was pretty linear. Mr. Green and Al Payson and all the teachers have a very set way of going about teaching, and so I went through a very systematic way of going through the first 2 years for freshman and sophomore. Within that, there was a lot of variation just because of my level at that time, so they pushed me really hard.
Sure.
And it wasn't like, okay, you'll do this for 2 weeks and you'll do this for 3. It was like, learn this Delacluse solo. You want to have it perfect by next week so we can go to the next one next week. Like, they wanted to go as quickly and as thoroughly as possible. So first 2 years were pretty linear. The next 2 years, I started studying with Eric Milstein and Mark Demolakis, and their style of teaching was very fluid. Whatever I needed to work on at that time, they helped me out, and they always gave suggestions on things to work on. They just wanted me to kind of find myself as a musician and as a player, and just kind of guide me through the next 2 years and just kind of push me as hard as they could while doing that. So I had a lot of freedom as to what I practiced and what I worked on, with a lot of good suggestions from those two. And that freedom was both good and bad, because sometimes of course, you waste time doing certain things, and then you find like something you obsess over, and you're like, oh, I'll just do this for 20 hours. So it was.
I've always, I think that's a really good point, that like freedom can actually be pretty almost limiting sometimes, because you don't have parameters, you don't have kind of the structure that could guide you through a process.
Yeah.
So I can see why that would kind of feel that way. So you're moving through DePaul, and is this kind of, I mean, one thing I definitely wanted to talk about is pedagogy, and obviously you've had a lot of influence by some great players and great educators. Is this a time where you kind of started developing your own philosophy, I guess, or concepts about pedagogy, or about performing, or about teaching, playing, all that stuff? Is that where this kind of started to take shape, or not yet?
I think, let's see, that's a good question. Because even when I was young, I was always interested in sharing what I had learned from someone else, just because I thought it was cool. I was like, oh, this is such a cool thing. Let me tell my friend about it, Like, oh, I just learned how to roll. Let me show my friend how to do it. Like, I was always interested in sharing. That being said, sometimes I learned things that later on I was like, oh, wait, I wish I had never learned that. Like, I have to go tell people, don't do that anymore.
Change my mind.
Yeah, so when I started studying with Mark, he introduced me to this method of movement called Feldenkrais. It's very similar to Alexander technique, but I think the biggest difference between the two is that Feldenkrais is a lot more explorative. There's not a lot of set rules as to what a certain position feels like, or like this position is a relaxed position, so you should strive for this particular position. Feldenkrais is more like everybody is different and everybody's body is different, so you have to find what's good for your specific situation. So you do that by these exercises. Like, it's a very explorative process. So having taken one of his wife is actually a Feldenkrais teacher. So she taught a class at DePaul, and after taking that one class, I was obsessed, because you could apply that explorative process to any movement, meaning I could apply it to all of my percussion movements, which is what Mark always hinted at and always kind of informed us about. And
right, so it's not like limited to music performance. It's like kind of life.
Yeah.
like based, like sort of life based exercise or movement or things like that. It's not strictly a performance based. It was just how you happen to be applying that.
Oh yeah, you can apply it to anything, which is a blessing and a curse. Because after I learned it, I was like, oh, I need to figure out how I'm walking. How am I brushing my teeth? How am I sleeping? I was always obsessive about it. So it was a combination of learning that process of Feldenkrais and really dissecting how I move personally and how I figure out how to do things on snare drum and marimba, tambourine. Like, I figured out all of those movements and figured out how to like get it all as efficient as possible. And through that process, that's where I really kind of codified my own way of helping somebody else find their personal preference of movements for those instruments. So again, it was like I learned a new thing and I wanted to share it. So I studied the heck out of it and figured it out for myself and figured out all the variations that could happen and all the different tendencies you'll find or bad habits you might find. Like, I just dissected the crap out of it, and now I'm able to like it's so cool because I can now hear someone play something and I can tell what's going on in their body and tell them like, oh, your thumb's too tight, loosen up, or oh, your right shoulder. Like, I can hear the sound tells me where the issue is, which is hilarious.
Yeah, and is that just from sort of doing it on your own, or being able to work with people and hear them doing it, or you just either from your own experience or from teaching experience?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Just because, again, I've done all the variations of like what I call pathways of connection in my book. Like if I'm throwing my wrist on the snare drum and I'm thinking about my shoulder, that creates a different sound than if I'm thinking about my forearm. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And also, if I see someone doing it, like if I see someone playing, then I can notice what's happening because it's really easy to see tension.
Yeah. So you mentioned your book, obviously spatial studies, and that this is kind of, I wouldn't say the end result because I know there's more, there's more to come from you, but kind of the beginning of your sort of these concepts or philosophies or these ideas that you've worked on and accumulated over the last 10 years.
Oh yeah, this is something that basically it's I would consider it like, actually one of my teachers said it's like stick control and wrist twisters, but like the way I would do it. But on top of that, the first book especially, it starts at bare bones basic technique, so a beginner can read it and catch on pretty quick. But on top of that, it's also for more experienced players is to revisit basic technique and really dissect what they're doing and to see like if they can improve what they're doing or just, make it more efficient and things like that. So if I were to list all the let me see, the concepts I've gotten from Feldenkrais, Moshe Feldenkrais, Bruce Lee, Mark Demalakis, Chris Lamb, Jojo Mayer, Joe Morello, and then all of my teachers. I think I've had like 18 teachers over the last 10 years. So, yeah. So all of that.
How does Bruce Lee fit in?
Oh, dude. Okay, so Bruce Lee's whole thing was to make any movement he wanted accessible by just thinking about it. So the way I kind of explained it is that the quickest way to access any reflex is to be completely relaxed. So if you were to like kind of let your arm hang and then throw it up by using your shoulder, it's a lot easier to do that if your shoulder's relaxed. Then you could just kind of, it's like a knee-jerk reaction where you're like shocked or like you're scared. It's that kind of reaction.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so I wanted to be able to access that immediately.
Do you know Henrik Larsson? Henrik Narberg Larsson?
Oh, no, I don't.
Overseas? He teaches at the Academy of Aarhus, and he, I know, is really into Aikido, and I think as from what I'm putting together, like it seems like a lot of the similar stuff about just posture and relaxation and movement, and then applying a lot of those sort of either martial arts or movement concepts to performance. So, it's really interesting. So that's actually stuff that you're kind of working into to spatial studies now, or that's kind of more future concepts? This is a little bit more beginner level, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Or are you touching on some of this stuff?
Yeah, the thing I wanted to do with my book is similar to what happened with me. I was never really like pigeonholed to a certain technique. It was always like, whatever you do that is relaxed and gets the point across, if it works, then it works. Why fix something that's not broken? So actually, Mr. Green used to say, if you can play Delacluse standing on your head in a corner with the drum tilted, and it sounds great, then that's fine. It might look a little weird, but it's relaxed. It's good. So in my book, I give you very general statements about how to go about exploring your technique and your body and figuring out what's going to work for you physically. I never really say, oh, make sure your hand's flat, or oh, make sure your sticks are in A position. Whatever happens, as long as it's relaxed and it looks similar to or close to certain pictures that I have, it's probably going to work out. And also I give a bunch of tendencies, what to watch out for. You might see, if your stick doesn't bounce, here are some ways to fix that. You relax your pinky finger. You had I give you all those options. So at the end, I feel like every beginner that goes through the book is going to look a little bit different, but generally they might all look the same just because of the way I explain things. But that's not a guarantee. Some people might look a little different or, have a different way of doing things, but the general concepts are all going to be the same.
Yeah, I guess that's what I think is pretty interesting about it. All of it is it's kind of relative to the individual, I guess. It's not, it's structured, but it's not as strict. It's not, one way or no way. So it really is kind of dependent on the either physiology or physical characteristics of the player, or how their body specifically moves or works. So, and whatever is best for the individual. I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And so there's more to come, obviously, or
yeah.
I think one time when we spoke before, off the mic, you're like, I got enough material in my head, or jotted down for 10 books or something. Is there, there's a future for this, obviously.
Oh yeah. So this book is the first of 4 snare drum books. The first one's all basic technique, going to paradiddles, and what I call reflex exercises. And then the next book is all about rolls, and it's going to be, if not the same density or more of this book, just because rebounds are really important, and I exploit the heck out of rebounds. So there are going to be a lot of exercises for that. The third book is all about timing and rhythmic integrity, and that won't be as long, hopefully. And the fourth book is like molar, stroke, crazy push-pull things, finger exercises. Like it's like the crazy book.
So you sort of have this kind of planned out then.
Yeah, I have the first four almost all written completely. Like all the books are basically done. I just have to edit a little bit more and add a little bit of text left, and then they'll be done. And then the fifth book is the xylophone book, which is also basically done. I finished that 2 years ago, but I had to go back and add a couple things that I started practicing. And then the sixth book is accessories. So that might have to be in 2 books because of how much information there is. And then the 7th book is the etude book for the snare drum, which is a French rudimental etude book. It's really, 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 really hard. So I apologize in advance. It's hard for me to play it, so.
Yeah. Disclaimer, an immediate disclaimer.
The 8th book is a timpani technique book. Debating whether or not to do solos for that, not sure. And then the 9th book is something dedicated to my first teacher, Doug Waddell. He always wanted a book that seamlessly goes from rudimental snare drumming into concert snare drumming. So I'll be working on that. The 10th book is my personal method of movement, which fortunately and unfortunately might be split up throughout the 10 books, just because certain aspects of each book will have a new physical problem. So I have to explain how to go through that physique and how that physical exploration throughout those 10 books. So the 10th book might just be split and, peppered into all the other books.
Right. I mean, obviously it's percussion focused, but I mean, do you see any opportunity maybe still in the music world, but outside of percussion that, performers could benefit from, like some of this, or you're like pretty much, I'm a percussionist, so it's geared, these are specifically geared towards percussionists, or is there kind of opportunity outside of that, you think? I mean, it just seems like the concepts would overlap, so maybe it would be of benefit to other performers.
Yeah, it's something I kind of want to work on with other instrumentalists. But for sure, like mine is geared towards percussionists specifically. I would always, especially on my website, I always cite where I get the information from, specifically Feldenkrais and Bruce Lee. So I always kind of tell people, read these books. This is where I get my information from. This is how I apply it. I give video recommendations of like pianists who have done similar things, like Martha Taubman. I have her playlist on my YouTube channel that people can look at. So I always tell people where I got the information, because what I got out of the video might not be the same as what somebody else will get. So
yeah, for sure.
So I intend on talking to other instrumentalists and kind of seeing what they would like, how they would interpret what I'm doing into like flute playing or clarinet playing, because it's all the same thing. You're just trying to mitigate as much unnecessary tension as you can while still getting a great sound and all that stuff. So
yeah,
I don't know how to blow into a clarinet, so I can't really tell people like how to expand and contract your diaphragm without tension. Like I could experiment with it and maybe find something that a clarinetist wouldn't find, but I wouldn't call myself a clarinet expert by any means.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it's just interesting to be able to kind of connect with instrumentalists and talk about the same ideas. So yeah, it's cool. And one thing I wanted to touch on also is you mentioned earlier you're wanting to share, like even at a when at a younger age when you were with the percussion group in Chicago and kind of giving back and sharing and teaching, and I like totally see that now with how active you are on social media. Like you're jamming on Instagram, and doing Facebook posts and doing Facebook Live stuff, and like really trying to like connect with the percussion community and explain a lot of what you're doing and what you're thinking. Like I mean, is that obviously that's all part of your plan, I guess. I mean, even from when you were younger, like that's part of what you want to do besides playing. Like you consider yourself an educator also.
Yeah, I think that's partially due to my experience with the Percussion Scholarship Group, mainly because every single lesson I got there was completely free. We didn't pay for anything. We didn't pay for sticks. We didn't pay for the drum. We didn't pay for the marimba rental. Like they gave us everything for free. And so like
that's awesome.
the fact that like I have a job, obviously. Well, I mean I still charge lessons, but something I do that like people kind of berate me about is that I only charge a flat fee for the lesson. I don't charge hourly. Like however long we go, that's how long we go. It's the same price. Just because like I want people to get as much information as they can for like whatever I charge. So like and then like on Facebook and Instagram, like some people who can't afford lessons, like where are they going to get solid, accurate, like something they can trust on social media? Like they can't like go to Chicago and study with Cynthia Ye sometimes, or like go to New York and study with Chris Lamb. Like it's the accessibility of that information is sometimes scarce. And especially on YouTube with all like, it's flooded with information, but not all the information's good. So I just wanted it to be accessible to people. And also some people will send me a video and be like, you have any recommendations? Like, why pay $300 for an hour lesson for me to tell you to relax your left shoulder? Like you wasted, like that's why... Now, if you want like super detailed, like, oh, you need to do these things for that, like that's another thing. But like for me to tell somebody, oh, your right thumb is too tight, just loosen that up, you should be good. Like it just makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. Like that's the whole idea of kind of paying it forward and kind of giving back to the community, because that's how you were able to get started and be where you were, or where you are. Sorry. And you've done a lot. Like, and and how old are you? You're not even, you're in your 20s, right? Like you're a kid, and like, and to me, you've attained really a large amount of success already. Like, how were you able to kind of measure your gradual success, or did you kind of see that as you were growing as a performer and kind of, going through school and starting to get some jobs? I know, you've had fellowships in Detroit and Pittsburgh, correct? And now you're in Calgary. Like, I mean, how did you kind of gauge your success or stay kind of focused on that? I know it's sort of a broad question, but I know there's a lot of young players out there that are trying to do kind of the same things, and how did you not get discouraged, I guess, and kind of keep yourself focused on what was coming next, if it makes sense?
Yeah, I guess something that I tried to do a lot of is to take pride in the small moments of happiness that I had.
Right.
Yeah, so like if I figured out like, oh, I figured out this one rhythm, I'm happy. Like I took pride in that. It didn't have to be oh, I won $10,000. That is my rating of success. Like, no,
Right.
like that's just a product of the work that you put in. So just
Right.
taking every day and enjoying the work that you do, like whether or not it results in something you think you want or you think that will meet a need or something. I'm really into Zen Buddhism, and something that they kind of say is if you feel like you're lacking something, that's the easiest way to feel sad about it. To feel like you're missing something. Like you have all the tools you need. Like you have the time, even if it's small time, even if it's 5 minutes, you have time. You have the drive, like you want to be good at drums. Like, okay, you have that. Like you have the tools you need to be successful in whatever aspect you want. So it's just kind of owning those things and being both grateful for the time you have, even if it's small time, and taking advantage of it and not kind of comparing and despairing. Like I never tried to compare myself success-wise to anyone. Like Jojo Mayer, I'll never be able to play as crazy as Jojo Mayer. Like, but I shouldn't feel bad about that. I'm happy playing as well as I do for me, like, because everybody's different. So I would say take pride in all the small moments, really enjoy and utilize the process, and never compare yourself. Yeah, never compare your success rate to someone else. Like it's good to have, mentors and people you aspire to be like. But to be like to be exactly that person is something that you shouldn't do, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Compare. I like what you say. Compare and despair. Like I've never kind of connected those. Like it's a really easy way to get discouraged when you start kind of overly comparing yourself to other performers or players or other people in your life. Like you are who you are, and be the best that you personally can be. Like, and one thing we touched on earlier is like your enthusiasm is just like infectious sometimes. Like when we've been together, like I can't help but like be excited just because you're like constantly excited and like enthusiastic. Like how do you, I mean, obviously that's just a sort of natural personality trait, but how do you, well, I guess two things, like how do you stay enthusiastic, or is there something or someone that does kind of inspire you to kind of stay motivated and stay excited?
Let's see. Kind of touching a little bit back on how I measure success. Something, again, Zen Buddhism, not taking any one moment as like a definition of you. Like, oh, I lost one audition, I suck. Like, it's just one moment in time. Like, that doesn't mean that you're it doesn't mean anything. So, like, the fact that kind of, doing some mumbo jumbo mind tricks, the fact that one moment never defines me means that every moment stays fresh. So I'm always excited to get to the next thing and figure out the next, like, oh, what's the next exercise I can figure out? Okay, I figured that out. Let me go to the next thing. And something my parents really instilled in me, and something I learned from my late grandfather, is like hard work pays off. And especially being African American, like we were kind of taught to work twice as hard, if not like 100 times more than everybody else, just to get by. So they were like, oh man, you got to work, you got to do these things, you got to like practice every day. And so I was always constantly working as a kid. So I'm always trying to get better and just try to find the next thing. And I also really enjoy just talking to people and sharing information and learning what they know and like just learning. So I'm always interested in people and Yeah, so I guess those two things inspire me, and things that keep me, yeah, and things that keep me motivated. The new, like I started watching these two dancers, Les Twins from France. Like they basically do the same thing I do, except they're dancing. Like they do the same exact technical things that I do for percussion in their dance routines. And if you ever watch them watch other dancers, they're as excited, if not more excited than I get talking to somebody. So it was really cool to see someone from a different medium be as excited about that medium as I was. And I like that, always motivates me for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, that's kind of what I was getting at, is like, yeah, somebody that's outside of maybe their percussion community or something that helps kind of drive you or keep you excited and keep you inspired. So yeah, that's great. So a couple other just kind of quick topic questions. Like, do you have a pre-performance routine? Something either you do to either relax or not relax, kind of get pumped up. Like maybe it goes back to your Zen Buddhism philosophies or thoughts. Like, do you have something like pre-performance you regularly do?
Yeah, I always meditate first, and then as I'm warming up, I'm meditating. So I do kind of a type of Tai Chi, only with drumsticks in my hand. So I do, it's basically like a huge molar strokes with my forearms and shoulders. And then I do 8 on the hand with only the wrists, super slow, super full, high, rebounded strokes, no tension. And then I do, what did I do? 8 on the hand, molar strokes, and up, down strokes. Also super slow and super rebounded, always, every single time.
So, yeah, and then kind of other hobbies, obviously, is connected to a lot of the stuff we've been talking about, the Feldenkrais, Bruce Lee, the ideas of movement, and then just other philosophies of Buddhism and things like. Is that what you would consider outside of music, like your kind of other interests, or do you fly fish?
I really wanted to find a hobby that was completely opposite of me, not opposite, but away from music. So I'm starting to take more pictures now. So I like taking pictures.
Oh yeah, photography, awesome. Obviously, you started playing drums, percussion at 2, which we discovered at the very beginning. Like, was there anything else you wanted to be when you grew up?
I always wanted to write books, actually. I was trying to write a detective series when I was younger called Detective Steve.
Awesome.
But yeah, I always wanted to write books, and I always wanted to be an artist as far as like painting, but I was never really good. So
Yeah, I mean, obviously, even art, starting to take pictures and photography, it's graphic. You're writing now, so you're like, I don't know, man. Just congratulations on like everything you're doing and just the entire cycle from being 2 to being, who you are now. Like it's really exciting and impressive. So I like congratulations, and I appreciate you taking some time to chat with us, and all the best, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we'll talk again soon. Thank you.
All right. See you soon.
This has been a BSP production, recorded and produced out of the Black Swamp Percussion facilities in Zeeland, Michigan. Audio assistance by Nathan Coles. And music by Adam Hopper.
Ja, maar ik zit ook weer mee.